But Joseph, another position you have is being the president of the Global Game Jam. So
Yes.
when I listen to you talking about the passion of game makers and your mission in convincing the audiences out there of how much energy is needed to do a good game, I know totally understand why you are also in an organization like the Global Game Jam. Yeah? Could you tell us a little bit more about your work there at the Global Game Jam? So it's one of the most fascinating organizations we have in the games industry, I think.
I think that it's a wonderful organization, and I'm proud to be associated with it. Obviously, I was a fan of Susan Gold and Gorm Lai, Fouad Kosmoud, and Lindsay Grace when they started it almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
And
okay.
Wasn't really involved with it then because I was busy working, but encouraged, my studio colleagues and young game makers to look into it because it's a good opportunity just to play around with, making things. I got involved because, when I moved to Colombia, one of the first things I thought would be important was to try to form more of a community within Medellin and within the students where the culture doesn't really promote teamwork. Teamwork is not promoted in the same way that it is in Europe. It's not the same as it is in the States. And the first time you have 5 strangers working together, it's just comedy in terms of watching how they don't understand how you're supposed to. That codependency is all right, and that you have to learn to trust your teammates. So I started it here. We're now the 15th largest game jam in the world out of the 106 countries that participate in this past year. We had about 260 plus participants, not counting our volunteers to help keep things together. And it's great. It's great to watch. When it's a volunteer board of organizers, we have only 2 employees, actually 3, a web person as well. Kate Edwards, as I believe you know from her time as the head of the IGDA and a longtime friend and colleague, took over the role as executive director. It'll be a year in August, which is great. And my role is to help as an officer of the company and president is to look for ways to help find resources to allow Kate to help propel the organization to bigger, brighter, and better. I think in this time of questionable politics, racism, underrepresented people who are disadvantaged, the foundations of the Global Game Jam have always been based on diversity, based on inclusiveness, and that we can all come together at least once a year for a weekend and have fun making something with people we don't know. And games are just great at that. But we need more global game jams. I mean, there's lots of other jams that are out there, but I think the foundation and the organization of the jam, we try to be, sometimes unsuccessfully, but we always try to be inclusive and allowing anyone who wants to try something to do this. We're basically a free event. Some events charge a little bit because they're giving you 3 meals for 2 days, free technology, et cetera, et cetera. There's a cost of security, whatever. But we're talking about $3, $4, not like an admission fee to a professional conference. I'm pleased that through the democratization of so many game tools that, there are so many ways for people with no experience to actually make something and realize that making games is fun. But more importantly, making something with other people is really even more fun. And that's the foundation behind the Global Game Jam. And I think it really is the reason why the event grows every year and is so successful and so loved.
As our society is turning more and more, how to say that? let's maybe say we get more and more political on so many different levels, yeah, and we have so many dictator guys running states and so many problems, climate change and all those really serious topics. Will those topics be sometimes in the future also be topics of the Global Game Jam? Or is it too hot to give your global community
That's a great question.
topics like
no,
this?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's honestly one of the things that we were just discussing in our board meeting 2 weeks ago, where what can we do, to improve as diverse as we claim to be. We're not as diverse as we could be. There are plenty of areas within the countries that host jams that could do more with the underprivileged and underrepresented. And so my challenge to my colleagues on the board is what can we do to improve and how do we do things better? The interesting thing about the themes and sub-themes that are part of the Game Jam is that we have a committee of about 14 to 16 people from around the world who sort of debate and put together the annual theme as part of the committee, and try to be as representative as possible within the various communities they represent. And that having been said, when the jam officially starts, last year's theme was the word restoration. Okay, so you can take that from the positive, or you can take that from a less than positive perspective in terms of a theme to make a game. And it was surprising to see, maybe not, that more people chose the positive as opposed to the negative in terms of blowing something up to rebuild it. It will be interesting to see whether the committee decides to have a very specifically racially sensitive theme for this year as a means of promoting it, or we'll do that as a sub-theme, as a diversifier, or the community itself will decide to make the games they want to make. It's like we really just give people the whiteboard, and then what they choose to do with the tools and the themes and suggestions, they're just that. And I think that one of the biggest challenges we face, for me as the head of the organization, is that when you have, a few thousand games made within a 48-hour time period, the ability to curate, play, and look for really special ideas in games is difficult. And then after the fact, because we are basically just volunteers, it's time to, it's hard to organize the time to invest to play a few thousand games and, again, look for the things that are special. So that's one of the things on my plate to try and improve, and working with Kate and the staff, and we'll continue to find solutions, try them, and see if we can improve things. Because I think that I just know from my website, my little Medellin Global Game Jam, there were like 6 games that were really interesting and fun. No, you're not going to. Well, I don't know that they're worth money to pay, but they are certainly fun and rewarding experiences for someone to get involved with, and that they demonstrate that you don't have to be, as experienced as Don Daglow or David Jaffe or Amy Hennig or the big industry talent to make something. And again, there's pleasure in making something. Stefan, you and I have talked about the joys of cooking and the rewards just from making something, and talking with some of your team members, the joy of making music. Well, there's a joy in making games, and trying to explain to my students that they have to have their parents or their siblings play the games that they're making in our project-based classes, so they understand that they get feedback. And that they also get the rewards of when someone touches what they've done and they like it, you should get that. That's the reason to do it.
We held a student Green Game Jam last November, and Gorm was one of the judges as well. And even for that, I think we had like 80 submissions or something. And to to go through and like shortlist and actually find, you know, the best games to rise to the top and stuff. It was a challenge. So I can't imagine with, you know, thousands of games, the undertaking that would be to make sure that like the best ones come to the top, for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons, you know, people from outside the industry during the cycle of leading up to the Game Jam will always ask, well, you know, what's your prize structure? What do people get? And it's like, well, what do you mean prize structure? Well, don't you have best game? And it's like, no, there are no best games. Making a game in 48 hours is the reward in itself. It's hard to do, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyone who can complete something that's playable in 48 hours has this, you know, wonderful reward of being able to share that. And the fact that, you know, as part of the process, you have to provide your source code, all of your assets, instructions, etc., so that other young game makers can see this under the Creative Commons license. It's just wonderful, you know, because that's how you learn. You learn by looking at what other people are doing.